I think he's moving along, that there's been a really wide-ranging set of questions. He's managed to keep most of the focus on Libra, which is supposed to be the focus, but there obviously have been quite a number of other areas touched. And the most critiques that have been offered of the company are being offered again today, and that was something that he should have expected, and it looks like he did.
Chris, is this a U.S. versus China debate to be had where Libra and where tech innovation is concerned, or is that too simple?
There is a very, very real competition going on with Chinese systems that they're trying to take across the globe at this point. And American innovation has to be operational here, and Libra is a big swing, and it's a big attempt to change things that haven't really been changed in the last 50 years about payments infrastructure. Mark is doing a very good job, as David Marcus did beforehand, about setting out the various concerns that particularly central banks can and should have about this, but ways that they can be mitigated by the operation of the Libra Association and by Calibra making policy decisions on its own.
Chris, the soundbite we just heard from Mr. Zuckerberg, if the U.S. doesn't act, China will. That's accurate. I get that. But
China has is one of the things that we have to talk about, right?
Sure. But if Facebook doesn't act, it doesn't mean that the U.S. doesn't act at all. There are lots of other players that could well act and fill that space, who have earned the trust when it comes to such an important thing as payments infrastructure, and maybe face better regulation more than Facebook has. Is that fair to say?
So, I mean, I think that on a regulatory side, obviously the company has chosen now to be in a very engaged posture, which is quite important. And it's one of the things that we tried to do on safety early on when I was there. But that outreach is critical. But obviously there have been some missteps in the meantime. They're running the company very differently now and trying to make sure that this is very consultative. And I think you see that the pledge of not launching without approvals is part of how they're trying to move this forward. Now, obviously the innovation that the company has driven is something that they very much want to continue, and that's why taking this big step is part of the plan from here. But trying to do it in a way that makes sure that legitimate concerns, especially of sovereign nations, are brought to bear is a critical part of doing this in the right way. Now, right now we have a public-private infrastructure around payments. Visa and MasterCard and PayPal and all the different players who have operated in this realm are a major part of payments infrastructures and are taking cuts every step along the way. So in a lot of ways, Facebook stepping into it is just bringing another competitor to the table, and that's something that should generally be encouraged.
So just to dig into that a little bit more, Chris, it seems like on the one hand, you have Facebook facing this credibility issue, right? And certainly that was evidenced today in terms of just the wide-ranging types of questions and topics that were being asked on the Hill by lawmakers. On the other hand, one of the key things that gives a government power is its control over its currency. And if you see widespread adoption of a cryptocurrency, like, for example, maybe Libra, that could potentially call that into question. So I wonder, do you think if it wasn't Facebook, and I realize that they're doing this with an association with other companies as well, but if it wasn't Facebook that was essentially spearheading it, do you think it would be gaining as much scrutiny as it currently is?
I actually think it would, because the threat there, the perceived threat, is that there's somehow a replacement as a reserve currency. But I think that Mark was very good this morning in explaining that this will actually extend the reach of the dollar, given that that's the major part of the basket of currencies that they want to make it stable.
I want to step away, Chris, from Libra, if I may. Yesterday, in an interview at the Vanity Fair event, Sheryl Sandberg said that the news feed on Facebook actually enhances people's access to a broader range of views as opposed to inhibits it. Do you agree with that statement?
Well, I mean, it depends, because every individual news feed is so individualized over time. For one person or another, it's hard to say that for sure. But on balance, they do have a lot of research that shows that there are people who have different identification among their friends and see different political posts in their news feed. So the key is what we're moving from is a sort of a world where not everything was sort of captured in terms of actions and shares, and now it is. And the algorithms are trying to work this out in terms of trying to present it to people in a coherent fashion. So for a while, you might end up with things where people have said that there's a filter bubble that you're getting yourself caught in. You're only hearing reinforcing information, but there are quite a number of people who say, well, I'm worried about that, so I'm going to actually make sure that I'm following some things that are a little bit different, and I'm going to adjust my feed that way. This is all part of a long-term media literacy in a new era that that it's a retraining for a lot of people. When I watch my kids, using online sites and playing games and limiting screen time too, they're getting used to a world where a lot of stuff is presented to them by algorithms, and they have to know what's behind them. And I think that that's a very open discussion that's being had, and that Facebook and a number of other researchers are trying to bring good, solid investigative techniques to bear about is this actually enhancing well-being. Now, Facebook, well, in the past has been a little bit dismissive of that, I think, and certainly has been accused of being dismissive of that. They're fully engaged at this point, and I think that that's a good thing for the company and a good thing for the world.
Chris, as a former general counsel, privacy officer at Facebook, if we simplify, admitting that I am simplifying it, the threats to Facebook into three buckets, one being antitrust and its overall size of the market, one being user privacy, and the other being accuracy of the information that people are posting and whether it's a publisher or not. Which of those do you think Facebook has to be most worried about that it could see successful legislation or regulation against it?
Well, there's obviously a lot of heat around the antitrust issue right now. But one of the things that, as a former antitrust lawyer, a trained antitrust attorney, and somebody who's gone on the offensive with antitrust actions representing Netscape against Microsoft, that there are ways that companies can use when they have monopoly power, and it's not clear that Facebook has monopoly power in a relevant market. People say that social networks are a relevant market. It's not clear that they are from an antitrust perspective. It's about communications. It's about connection. It's about all these things that are much broader. And obviously, Facebook coming into a completely different market where they don't have a presence, like payments, is an indication of a desire to compete instead of actually to leverage a monopoly in any area. So I don't think that a lot of the antitrust language has been around, oh, they're just too big and too powerful. And at the end of the day, when you actually have to put that argument before a court, it doesn't go so well when you have to adhere to existing antitrust law. Now, could a variety of players try to seek different rules under new antitrust laws and propose that as Elizabeth Warren has proposed, to have a platform rule? Sure, that's a risk to the company and a possible direction that people could go. But if this were brought as an antitrust case by the state AGs or by the DOJ, for instance, they've got to show that there's a monopoly that operates and that there's been anti-competitive conduct. And it's hard to say that either of those are present at this point.